She stood at the altar, waiting for a man who never came. Years later, in a courtroom packed with whispers, he finally appears, only to discover he left behind more than just a broken heart. She's not alone. She's raising his 4 children. But will his return bring salvation, or will it unleash a storm too late to stop? Before we dive into this unforgettable journey, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? If stories about love, sacrifice, and second chances speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we're bringing you another powerful story you won't want to miss. Claire Hamilton stood before the mirror, her heart pounding beneath the layers of silk and lace. Her wedding dress shimmered under the soft chandeliers of the bridal suite, an off-the-shooter masterpiece of delicate embroidery, a tight bodice, and a delicate, flowing train. She looked like a bride straight out of a fairy tale, but inside she was... "Ready, Claire?" her best friend asked, adjusting her veil one last time. Claire turned back with a nervous smile. "Like I always do?" Today wasn't just about the dress or the ceremony. It was the culmination of 2 years of love, of risk, of believing that Ethan Cole, the most emotionally distant man she'd ever met, was worth waiting for. He wasn't the easiest man to love, but he was the man who'd looked at her across a crowded ballroom and seen what no one else had. He had offered her a forever version, and she had accepted without hesitation. Downstairs, the church was packed with society's elite, senators, celebrities, CEOs. The Cole name alone was prestigious, but this wedding? This was an event. The press waited behind velvet ropes, photographers buzzed around like bees in designer suits, and at the altar, nothing was random. Every flower, every candle, every musical note was... Ethan's father, Conrad Cole, watched it all like a general overseeing a battlefield. "Make sure he's on time," he told his assistant. "There can be no mistakes today." In the groom's room, Ethan Cole stood by the window, his tie loose, his hands shaking. His jaw was clenched, his usually placid face pale. He was 33, impossibly handsome, with tailored features and cold, calculating eyes that had once conquered boardrooms and silenced opponents. But today, those eyes were clouded by something else. He glanced at the elegant ring box on the table. The diamond sparkled perfectly, like everything else at this wedding. Everything, except how he felt. There was a knock on the door. "10 minutes, Mr. Cole." He didn't answer. His thoughts were a whirlwind. He saw Claire smiling at him across the table as they ate greasy sandwiches at midnight. He remembered how she'd fallen asleep on his shoulder in the back of a car after a dinner party. He saw her laugh, cry, challenge him, soften him. And then he heard his father's voice again. "You don't have to love her, Ethan. Just marry her. Do what's expected." The walls seemed to close in. He opened the ring box, closed it, opened it again. Then he looked at the door and walked out. Claire stood in the grand entrance of the church, her arm around her father's. The organ swelled. The door opened. Hundreds of eyes turned. But the altar was empty. She took a step forward, waiting for Ethan to emerge from the next room. The music continued. The silence stretched. "Where is he?" Claire whispered. Her father squeezed her hand. "Maybe it's just a delay." Then the whispering began. A servant ran up to the priest, muttering something very quickly. The priest's face changed. Claire's heart dropped into her stomach. The music stopped. A woman in the front row gasped. Then a man in the back stood and walked out. The event coordinator rushed to Claire, panic in her voice. "He's not here. He's not anywhere. He's gone." Claire couldn't speak, couldn't move. Her knees buckled, and her father caught her just before she hit the floor. Cameras flashed, phones captured every moment. She had been left at the altar, in front of everyone, in her wedding dress. Alone. The limo ride back was silent. Claire's veil was crumpled in her lap, her makeup streaked from tears she hadn't realized were falling. She stared out the window as headlines began appearing on news feeds. Runaway groom, Ethan Cole leaves bride mid-ceremony. Tycoon's wedding turns into public humiliation. She turned off her phone. The days that followed blurred together. She locked herself in her penthouse, curtains drawn. Her father visited once, but she sent him away. Olivia, her former nurse and friend, came by and left food at the door. Claire didn't eat. She kept replaying it. What had she missed? What signs had she ignored? The memories rushed in without mercy. Ethan sitting in silence during wedding planning, brushing off guest lists, zoning out during cake tastings. She had chalked it up to nerves, to stress, to the weight of his father's expectations. But deep down, maybe he had always been halfway out the door. On the fourth day, Claire woke with a wave of nausea. She barely made it to the bathroom in time. She blamed it on stress, on grief, on shame. But something felt different. A thought crossed her mind. No, it couldn't be. But she had to know. She dug through her drawer and found a single, unopened test. Minutes later, she stared at 2 pink lines. Pregnant. Tears welled up again, but this time they were a mix of fear, disbelief, and something else. She scheduled a doctor's appointment the next day. Claire sat stiffly on the examination table, clutching her coat in her lap. The nurse smiled gently and applied the gel to her stomach. A soft whoosh filled the room. The doctor furrowed his brow, then smiled. He said, adjusting the monitor. You're not just pregnant. You're having... Claire blinked. Excuse me? Quadruples, the doctor confirmed. It's rare, but it happens naturally, sometimes. All 4 heartbeats are strong, but this will be a high-risk pregnancy. We'll have to monitor you closely. Claire couldn't breathe. 4 heartbeats. 4 lives. Her hands shook as she stared at the screen. Her body had been broken for days, but inside her something new had begun. Something unstoppable. She stepped out of the clinic into the morning light, dazed and dazed. The bustling city did not stop. Horns honked, taxis rushed by. People passed her without realizing that the universe inside her had slowly changed. She leaned alone against a lamppost, clutching her stomach. She had been humiliated, abandoned, and broken beyond measure. But now, she was a mother. She would raise these children. She didn't need Ethan Cole to make her strong. She was a mother. Back home that night, she sat by the window, a blanket wrapped around her. She held a photograph of her and Ethan from better days, the corners bent with time. She looked at his face, confident, smiling, and felt something crack inside her. I don't know why you left, she whispered, voice shaking, but you don't get to disappear from their lives too. She placed the photo face down on the table. Anne rested her hand on her belly. You've got me, she whispered, and I promise, that's enough. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. Inside, 4 tiny hearts beat as one. And Claire Hamilton, abandoned bride, public scandal, soon-to-be mother of 4, made a silent vow to rise again. For them, Claire Hamilton vanished from public life the moment she stepped out of the hospital. She didn't tell anyone, no press release, no last statement, she simply disappeared. She sold the penthouse she once shared with Ethan's name on the lease. Quietly, she disconnected her phone, shut down her social accounts, and packed what little she had into the back of a second-hand SUV. There was no one left to call, no one she trusted, no one she wanted pity from. She found refuge in a small, quiet town called Havenwood, just outside the city, far enough to disappear, close enough to reach the hospital when the time came. Her new home was a modest 2-bedroom rental with chipping paint, creaky floors, and a landlord who asked no questions. It was the opposite of luxury, but it was safe, anonymous. Her body was changing quickly. Each day brought new aches, new discomforts, and a growing awareness that her life was about to be completely unrecognizable. By the end of her first trimester, she could hardly button her coat. At night, she lay curled on the old sofa, one hand on her belly, whispering promises into the dark. Don't know how I'm going to do this, but I will. Mornings brought nausea, dizziness, and overwhelming fatigue. She would try to make toast and end up curled on the kitchen floor. Her grocery money began to dwindle. She rationed what little she had: rice, canned beans, plain crackers. She drank water like it was gold. She didn't complain. She had no job, no income. Her savings account, once secure, now dropped with each hospital bill, each grocery run, each utility payment. It scared her more than she let herself admit. Then, as if by grace, Olivia Davis returned to her life. Olivia had been Claire's nurse years ago during a short hospital stay. When she saw Claire's name on the patient list again, her heart ached. And when she found out Claire had moved to Havenwood, she showed up at her door without hesitation, carrying groceries and a gentle smile. "I don't need details," Olivia said, stepping into the kitchen. "I'm here to help." And she did. She showed up weekly, sometimes daily. She brought fresh soup, prenatal vitamins, maternity clothes from a donation bin, and the kind of calm only a seasoned nurse could offer. She helped Claire time her contractions when they started too early. She rubbed her back when the stress became too much. She reminded her to eat, to breathe, to rest. Claire never spoke Ethan's name. Olivia never asked. The understanding between them was quiet, sacred. Claire worked odd freelance jobs from her old laptop. Copy editing, proofreading, remote admin gigs she found on obscure websites. The pay was low, but it kept the lights on. She sat at the tiny kitchen table, typing with swollen fingers, her back aching, and her belly pressing up against the desk's edge. Every cent counted. By the time the third trimester hit, she could barely walk. Her ankles swelled, her blood pressure rose. Her doctor placed her on strict bed rest, fearing the babies would come early. And they did. At 31 weeks and 5 days, Claire woke to searing pain in her lower back. Her water broke before she made it to the phone. Olivia rushed over, helped her into the car, and sped toward the nearest hospital, with one hand on the wheel and the other gripping Claire's. "I can't do this," Claire sobbed. "They're too small." "Bullpen," Olivia said. "You already are." The delivery was urgent. Bright lights, rushing nurses, masked doctors. Claire barely had time to scream before the room filled with the sounds of machines and cries so soft they broke her heart. Noah, Emma, Grace, Liam were born prematurely. All four rushed into the NICU before she could even hold them. She lay in recovery, empty and aching, her arms desperate for the weight of what she had carried for months. The nurse came in later and said gently, "They're small, but they're strong." Claire didn't sleep. She sat upright in her hospital bed, staring at the sterile ceiling, trying to memorize their faces from the seconds she had seen them. The NICU became her world. For weeks, she lived in a rotation of pumping milk, watching monitors, sitting beside incubators, and reading softly to tiny ears. She pressed her hand to the glass and whispered prayers no one taught her. She told them stories of stars and oceans and bravery. She promised them she would never leave. The forms asked for a father. She left it blank. When the nurses asked, she looked them in the eyes and said, "There isn't one." Some looked away. Others gave her knowing glances. A few offered quiet nods of respect, but no one pressed further. After 56 days, the babies were cleared to go home. Claire returned to her tiny rental, now filled with 4 bassinets, a mountain of diapers, and a fridge stocked by Olivia and a few generous neighbors. A woman named Marcy from down the street brought hot meals every other evening. A high schooler named Riley helped mow the lawn for free. Kindness, Claire learned, didn't always need to come with a name. The house was chaos. Bottles boiled over, babies cried in shifts. She moved like a ghost, feeding, rocking, changing, repeating. She sang lullabies through tears, whispered encouragement to herself in the mirror, and learned to swaddle with one hand while typing invoices with the other. She took freelance jobs whenever she could, short gigs, editing ad copy, ghostwriting, parenting blog posts. Every dollar helped. Every nap mattered. Exhaustion became a constant companion. Her back ached, her shoulders tensed, but her heart had never felt fuller. She created a blog under a pen name, 4 Small Hearts, sharing snippets of her journey, never mentioning names, never revealing her past. The blog grew. Mothers from around the country sent messages of support. Some shared similar stories of abandonment, of strength, of rising up alone. Sponsorships followed, baby formula, sleep schedules, parenting apps. For the first time in months, Claire felt something close to security. One afternoon, Olivia found her asleep at the table, her head resting next to a laptop and a bottle of cold coffee. The babies had finally gone down at the same time. Olivia quietly cleaned the kitchen, set fresh meals in the fridge, and whispered before she left, "You're doing more than surviving, Claire. You're building something." Claire woke and saw the food. She didn't cry, she just smiled. The months passed. The babies grew. They started to coo, then roll, then smile at her when she walked into the room. Claire kept her curtains closed when cars slowed in front of the house. She never allowed visitors she didn't know. Her name still carried whispers in the outside world, but here, inside these walls, she was just mom. One day, as she held Grace close to her chest and looked out at the fading sunset, Claire whispered, "I don't miss the life I had." She meant it. She didn't miss the diamonds, the champagne, the press events. She missed nothing about being Ethan Cole's. What she had now, this madness, this love, this unrelenting devotion, was worth everything. She had been left behind, but she had moved forward. Not just for herself, for them. For Noah, for Emma, for Grace, for Liam. And if the world came knocking again, she would be ready. This time, not as a bride, but as a mother who had already weathered the storm and survived. 3 years had passed. Claire Hamilton had buried the past so deeply that it felt like a faded nightmare. Distant, distorted, almost unreal. But the 4 little lives she fed, bathed, rocked to sleep, and loved more fiercely than she thought possible, they were very real. They were her world. And now, one of them needed saving. Liam's heart murmur had worsened. The specialists warned her about complications, about surgical options, about long-term care that would cost more than she earned in a year. She had exhausted every option. No insurance, no grants, no family support. So Claire did the one thing she had sworn she'd never do. She filed a child support claim. Not because she wanted a dime from Ethan Cole, not for revenge, but because her son needed help, and no matter how much she hated the man who abandoned her, she wouldn't let pride keep her from doing what was right for her children. The courthouse was nothing like the glittering gala venues of her old life. The floors were dull, the benches were scratched, the air was thick with the hum of quiet desperation. She held her breath as she walked in, Olivia at her side. Her 4 children. Noah, Emma, Grace, and Liam sat quietly near the front, their small hands clasped in their laps. They were calm, curious, too young to grasp the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Then, the doors opened, and Ethan Cole walked in. Claire didn't need to turn around. The air shifted, her spine straightened. She recognized his presence like a tremor in her bones. Ethan froze the moment he entered. He scanned the room and then saw them. 4 children. 4 perfect little faces with his eyes. It felt like the floor dropped out from beneath him. He had received the legal notice 2 weeks earlier. When he read Claire's name on the papers, he thought it was some cruel twist of fate. He hadn't spoken to her since the day he walked out. Hadn't spurged to her, hadn't dared to. And now, standing in a small courtroom in Havenwood, he was staring at the consequence of every decision he had made. Claire stood as the judge called the hearing to order. She was calm, composed, but there was a quiver beneath her surface. "I'm here because I have no other choice," she began. "I raised these children alone. I've never asked for anything, but now one of them is sick, and I can't afford the care he needs. This isn't about money, it's about giving my son a chance to live." She paused, her eyes darting to Liam, who sat beside Olivia, clutching a small, plush bear. "I've never spoken the name of their father," she continued. "They don't know him. I made that choice, but I won't let that choice cost them their health." Ethan couldn't breathe. He had thought about Claire every day since he left. He had convinced himself she was better off without him, that walking away was his one noble act, that he would only hurt her more if he stayed. But now, looking at those 4 small lives, he realized how wrong he'd been. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Ethan stood but said nothing. He couldn't find words, not yet. The media caught wind of the case within hours. Old wedding photos resurfaced. Headlines screamed across social media. Runaway groom faces secret. Family. Ethan Cole's 4 children revealed in court shock. He requested a private meeting with Claire immediately after the hearing. To her own surprise, she agreed. They met in a plain side room, just the two of them. No lawyers, no cameras. He stood when she entered. She didn't sit. "Faces, what it takes for you to show up," she said coldly. Ethan lowered his head. "Claire, I didn't know." "You didn't care to know." "I thought I was protecting you," he said. "From what?" she shot back. "From a life with the man I loved? From the father of my children?" "I wasn't ready," he said. "I was scared. My father, he said it would ruin everything, that I wasn't built for marriage. I believed him, and then I was ashamed, and then it felt too late." Claire's eyes were bright with tears she refused to shed. "I gave birth to 4 children alone," she said. "I named them, fed them, rocked them to sleep when they had fevers and night terrors. I missed meals so they could eat. I skipped sleep for weeks. Where were you?" "I was wrong," he said, voice cracking. "I've never been more wrong about anything." "You don't know your name," she whispered. "They think their father is a story. A ghost?" "I don't want to be a ghost," he said. Claire stepped back, crossing her arms. "You don't just get to walk in and be a father now. This isn't about you. This is about Liam. This is about care." "That's what this is." "Then I'll pay for everything," Ethan said. "Doctors, hospitals, whatever it takes." "To pretend that nothing had happened? Do you disappear again?" Nina said quickly, "I want to be part of their lives." She looked him over. His tailored suit, his polished shoes, his sorrowful eyes. "They're not media leverage," she warned. "They're not part of your redemption arc. No. You don't need a check. They need consistency. They need love. And I need to know you're not going to destroy them the way you destroyed me." "Bile. I swear to you, Claire," he said softly. "I'm not that man anymore. Let me show you. Let me prove it." She didn't speak for a long moment. "We all have your eyes," she finally said. "Noah's shy but brilliant. Emma's stubborn. Grace, she talks to the stars. Liam's the one who reminds me most of you. Quiet, strong, he hides his pain." Ethan swallowed hard. "We want to meet them," he said, "even if it's just once. Please." She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. Outside, reporters waited with questions and cameras. Claire stepped into the sunlight, shielding her children from the glare. As they walked to the car, Emma asked, "Mommy, who is that man?" Claire paused, brushing a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "Someone we used to know," she said. "Maybe someone we'll get to know again." Inside the courthouse, Ethan watched from a window. For the first time in years, his heart didn't feel like stone. He had missed everything. But he wasn't going to miss what came next. Not if Claire gave him a second chance. Not if she believed, just a little, that people could change. Claire stood at the kitchen sink, staring at the fading sky. The kids were asleep, the house quiet, but her chest felt heavy. The court hearing had stirred something she thought she'd buried long ago. A memory, a fracture, a flicker of a life she'd closed the door on. She hadn't answered Ethan's request to visit the children. Not yet. Not because she wanted to punish him, but because she didn't trust herself. Or him. The knock on the door that evening was soft, familiar. Olivia answered first, but Claire followed. And there he was, Ethan Cole, holding nothing but a letter in one hand and guilt in his eyes. "I'm not here to fight," he said, "just to speak." Claire didn't invite him in. She stepped onto the porch, arms crossed, her stance steady. He handed her the letter. Wrote it. Everything I should have said 3 years ago, and everything I want to say now. She didn't take it, not yet. "I'm sorry," Ethan continued. "I know that word means nothing compared to what I did. I broke something that day. I broke us. Claire's gaze didn't soften. He continued, his voice low. My father manipulated me, said I wasn't ready, that marrying you would be the end of my career, my freedom. I believed him. I thought I was doing the noble thing by staying gone. She finally spoke. Noble? No, he said, nodding. It wasn't. I see that now. She looked away, her jaw tight. You think saying sorry makes up for it? You think showing up in a suit and handing me a letter erases the nights I rocked 4 crying babies while praying they wouldn't all get sick at the same time? How strange it feels to know. Claire took a slow breath. You know what hurt most? It wasn't the scandal. It wasn't being humiliated. It was waking up one night and feeling them kick for the first time, and knowing I was the only one who'd ever feel it. He closed his eyes for a moment. But Luther could see it in her eyes. I can never undo what I did, he said, but I want to be here now, for them. I want to meet them, Claire, just once. Her arms tightened across her chest. They don't know you, they don't ask for you. They have a life, a routine, stability. You walking in could blow that apart. I won't hurt them, he said quietly. Please, just let me try. Claire didn't answer. Not then. That night, she sat with Olivia on the living room couch, the letter unopened on the coffee table between them. To see them, Claire whispered. Olivia leaned back, folding her arms. What do you want? Pick them, keep their world safe, and I want him to stay away, but also, they deserve to know. Olivia didn't push. She let the silence speak. Then she said gently, You've done everything for them, Claire, everything. But maybe what's best for them now isn't about what's safest for you. The next afternoon, Claire texted Ethan a single line. You can meet them, once, supervised. He responded in less than a minute. Thank you, just tell me when. Claire picked a good Saturday morning. Olivia would be there. The visit would be short, nothing personal, no explanation yet, just a meeting. She didn't tell the kids who was coming. A friend is visiting, she said. Ethan arrived in jeans and a navy sweater, carrying a wooden puzzle box and storybooks. He looked nervously, puzzlement, more human. The kids watched him curiously. Claire stood close, watching every move, every gesture, every word. Noah was the first to approach, his silent gaze on Ethan's shoes. Your feet are big, he said bluntly and without hesitation. Ethan gasped, I guess so. With only a few strokes of the whip. You run fast? Noah asked. I used to run fast, Ethan answered. I'm not sure. Emma stood with her arms crossed like Claire. Are you a doctor? Ethan said. But I know some. Liam needs a heart doctor, she added. Mom said so. Ethan's expression softened. I'm helping. Grace said nothing. She just looked at him with wide, surprised eyes. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and placed a crayon drawing in his lap. P.S.A. He looked down. She had drawn a tall figure with gray eyes holding 4 tiny hands. Ethan blinked quickly, nodded. Perfect. Liam backed away, cautiously. He sat next to Olivia, hugging his teddy bear tightly. Ethan didn't push. He knelt down slowly and held out a hand. Hi, Liam. I'm Ethan. Nice to meet you. Liam said nothing, but he looked at the hand, then the man, then the puzzle box, and nodded. They spent 20 minutes on the floor, putting together animals and letters. Ethan let them lead. He didn't exaggerate. He didn't interrupt. He just listened calmly, observed, smiled. And somewhere in the middle of the giraffe puzzle, Liam leaned over and whispered something in Ethan's ear. Claire didn't hear, but Ethan's eyes were moist. He nodded again, mouthing the word okay. After the visit, Claire walked him to the door. The kids were in the next room, showing Olivia the pieces. It went better than I expected, she admitted. I'm grateful you gave me a chance, Ethan said. She hesitated. What did Liam say to you? Ethan looked at her. He asked if I would come next time. Claire said nothing. Dina added, I told him I hoped so, but it wasn't up to me. She watched him go, her hand resting on the doorframe long after it had closed. Back inside, Emma was giving orders to her siblings with fake microphones. Grace was drawn back. Noah sat with his pieces. And Liam? He looked at Claire and asked softly, Is Ethan coming back? She sat quietly next to him and gently stroked his hair back. I don't know yet, she said honestly. But deep down, something had changed. Not in forgiveness, not in healing, but in possibility. That, Claire realized, was its own kind of power. The door had opened, just an inch. But sometimes, even the smallest cracks let in the light. Ethan returned the following weekend, and the one after that. Claire didn't make it easy. She set hard boundaries. No unannounced visits, no extravagant gifts. Visits capped at 2 hours, always supervised. Ethan agreed to all of it without protest. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She was protecting the world she'd built from the man who once shattered hers. But the children? They adapted faster than she ever expected. Noah, observant and gentle, took to Ethan slowly, following him room to room, asking endless questions about how cars worked, what clouds were made of, and whether stars could fall. Emma, bold and suspicious, kept him on his toes. Why are you here now? She asked during the second visit. Did you forget us? Ethan knelt, eye to eye. I didn't know you were here, but now I do, and I'm not going anywhere. She watched him for a long moment, then handed him her crayon drawing with a shrug. Okay, but don't lie. Grace, sweet and soft-spoken, didn't say much. She just drew him pictures, one of a house with a rainbow door, one of 4 kids playing piano beneath a chandelier, and one of him holding an umbrella for Claire in the rain. She never explained them. She didn't have to. Liam remained the most guarded. His quiet nature masked something deeper. Worry, maybe fear. But each time Ethan showed up, he sat a little closer, said a little more, smiled a little longer. And one Thursday night, Claire noticed Liam coughing harder than usual. His breaths were short and shallow, his lips pale. She didn't wait. Olivia rushed them to the hospital while she called Ethan. He arrived breathless, coat half bonned, shoes mismatched, panic clear on his face. Claire didn't yell at him. She didn't question how fast he got there. She simply let him stand beside her outside the NICU window, watching Liam hooked up to oxygen and monitors. Hours passed. Doctors came and went. Claire sat slumped in a chair, head in her hands, barely able to breathe. Ethan brought her a warm tea. She stared at the cup. I used to bring you this, he said softly. You hated coffee. Died. Still do? She didn't thank him, but she drank it. Later, as Liam stabilized and drifted to sleep, Ethan asked if he could sit beside him. Claire nodded, and for 20 quiet minutes, Ethan held Liam's tiny hand and told him a story about a brave boy who fought a dragon and saved his whole village. When he finished, he turned to Claire. Stronger than I ever was. She didn't disagree. Back in the hallway, Claire broke down, not from fear, but exhaustion. Olivia caught her as her knees gave out, lowering her to a bench. Claire cried into her hands. I thought I had to do this alone, she said. For you have, Olivia replied, but maybe now you don't have to. The visits grew longer, the boundaries softened. Saturdays became Ethan Day. The kids would wake up early, set the table with mismatched cups, and wait by the window for his car. Ethan arrived with his sleeves rolled up and his heart open. He brought books and crafts, learned how to cut fruit into stars, and sat through toddler dance recitals without once glancing at his phone. He even let the kids style his hair, twisting it with plastic clips until it looked ridiculous. They looked happy, though. Claire remained cautious. She watched from the doorway, folding laundry in the next room, but slowly, something inside her began to change. It was the little things. Ethan took the time to listen. He never made promises he couldn't keep. When Emma asks him about his past, he looks her in the eye and says, "I made a big mistake, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." When Noah asks if he's like the dads in the books, Ethan replies softly, "I'm learning to be one." Then there's family dinner. It was Olivia's idea. "You need to see who he is now," she tells Claire, "not who he used to be." Claire reluctantly agrees. She cooks for herself, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and a salad the kids help mix, with a drizzle of fragrant olive oil. She wears a soft blue dress she hasn't worn in years. She doesn't know why she chose it. Maybe it reminds her of the woman she used to be. Ethan arrives with a homemade apple pie and a box of tea Claire hasn't seen in years. She stared at the label. "That store is closed." "Found the owner," he said. "She makes small batches at home now." Claire said nothing. She set it aside without comment. Dinner was noisy and messy. Grace spilled juice. Emma sang a song with her own lyrics. Liam climbed onto Ethan's lap mid-sentence and demanded to be fed like a baby bird. Ethan played along, smiling the whole time. After dinner, Claire cleared the plates, while Ethan offered to help. They moved around each other in the kitchen, cautious but strangely natural. "Do you remember our trip to Boston?" he asked suddenly. "The bookstore with the broken elevator?" "Remember being stuck in there for 45 minutes, Claire said, giving the smallest smile. "You're terrified, but you still joke about dying next to the cookbooks." She snorted softly. "You were worse. You tried to pry the door open with a coat hanger." He grinned. "You were trying to impress me." Claire glanced at him. "And did it work?" Finally, the silence between them thickened. Then Ethan said, "Claire, I don't expect you to forgive me. Not yet. But I want you to know, I see what I did. I see who I was. And I see what you've built without me. It's beautiful. You're incredible." She swallowed hard. "You weren't there when I needed you." "I know. I don't know if I'll ever trust you again." "That kind of showing up anyway," he said. "For them. For you. If you let me." She didn't answer. Not with words. But later that night, she found the tin of tea still on the counter. She poured a cup, added a splash of honey, and sat by the window. She watched the stars. She thought of the man who left, and the one trying to come back. She didn't believe in fairy tales anymore. But maybe, just maybe, she believed in redemption. Especially when 4 small voices now called that man Daddy. Ethan sat alone in the car, staring at the ebony brick building on the corner of Maple and 6th. The sign read, "Haven House, Shelter for Women and Children." A place Claire had mentioned, a place she had volunteered at during her toughest days. A place she said she had found her dignity. He got out quietly, his hands in his coat pockets, and entered the building through a side door. He didn't sign at the front desk. Instead, he spoke to the director, a kind woman named Teresa, and pressed an envelope into her hand. "This is anonymous," he said. "No press, no mention, just help as many people as you can." Teresa opened it then and found a check for $50,000. He left without looking back. It was the first of many donations Ethan would make quietly. Scholarships for single mothers to return to school, housing grants, baby gear, all without his name attached. He wanted to rebuild, not with grand gestures, but with meaningful action. And the biggest change of all began within him. That same week, he met his father. Charles Cole sat behind the large oak desk in his attic office, sipping his whiskey. "I hear you've been playing the hero lately," he said coolly. "Throwing away your precious legacy for some women and children." Ethan straightened. "They're not some women and children, they're my family, and I'm no longer pursuing a life that leaves me feeling empty." Charles sneered. "You're making a mistake." "Oh," Ethan said. "Living in your father's shadow is a mistake." That was the last time he saw his father. And for the first time, he was truly on his own. From that day on, Ethan stopped hiding. He posted his first photo on social media, with his kids smiling in the park, Emma leaning on his shoulder, Noah holding his hand for a long time. The caption simply read, "Best moment of my life." He started showing up at parent-teacher conferences, taking the kids to birthday parties, buying matching Cole Crew t-shirts and wearing them without shame. Claire noticed the shift. She didn't say much, but she saw. He was changing, not for show, but for real. And then one evening, after dropping the kids off, he lingered in the doorway. "For your head. You remember your dream?" he asked. Claire looked up from the kitchen table. "Which one?" "Design studio. You said you wanted to create clothing that told stories, pieces for women who'd been through things and survived." She smiled softly. "That was a lifetime ago." Unless disagreed. He stepped aside, revealing a small, wrapped portfolio. Inside were architectural sketches, a storefront, a workshop, a boutique with space for classes and sewing machines. "Someone owed me a favor," Ethan said. "The lease is signed, it's yours. No strings, no conditions." Claire looked at him, stunned. "I didn't do it to impress you," he said. "I did it because the world deserves your vision, and because I want to see you create again." Tears stung her eyes. She whispered, "Thank you." And Ethan, with a quiet nod, left her with the blueprints to a future he hoped she'd step into. The studio opened 2 months later. Claire called it Second Thread, a name Olivia helped her choose. It represented new beginnings, repurposed stories, the power of resilience. The front windows were decorated with quotes from women who had survived, healed, and thrived. Ethan came to the opening, standing quietly in the back with the kids. He didn't give a speech or cut a ribbon. He just smiled as Claire beamed, wearing one of her own designs for the first time in years. They were still finding their rhythm. There were still pauses, walls, wounds. But one day, Claire received a letter in the mail. No return address, just her name written in Ethan's familiar hand. She opened it slowly, unsure of what she'd find. It was long, raw, not polished or rehearsed. He wrote about the first time he saw her in that worn-out cafe, sketching designs on napkins. About how he never forgot her smile, even when he was too proud to admit it. He wrote about the guilt that haunted him daily, the wedding, the silence, the fear that had ruled his life. He ended with this: "You don't want forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, loving you changed me. You showed me a kind of courage I never had. If I never get to stand beside you again as a partner, I'll still be grateful for the chance to try." Claire read the letter twice, then again. She didn't cry, she didn't call him. Not yet. Instead, she tucked it into a drawer beside her bed. The next week, the school hosted a family fun day. Parents were invited to join in for games and crafts. Claire hadn't planned on going, but Emma begged her. When she arrived, she saw Ethan kneeling by the craft table, helping Grace glue pom-poms onto paper hearts. Liam clung to his leg, giggling. Noah waved from across the playground. Claire stood at the edge of the room, watching them. She wasn't watching a man trying to earn points. She saw a father present, patient, trying. Ethan looked up and saw her. He smiled, uncertain. She walked over and handed him a cup of lemonade. "Hi," she said. The children didn't notice the exchange, but Olivia did, watching from a distance, her hand pressed over her heart. Later that week, the school asked Ethan and Claire if they'd co-host a charity event for families at the shelter. It was part fundraiser, part celebration. Claire hesitated. It might be awkward. Ethan shrugged. "Then we'll be awkward, together." They planned it over coffee and phone calls. The kids helped make signs and paint banners. The event was held in the school auditorium, filled with music, laughter, and gratitude. Claire spoke briefly, thanking the community for showing up for mothers like her. Ethan stayed in the background until Claire called him forward. "This is Ethan," she said, her voice calm. "He's learning what redemption looks like, and I'm learning what trust feels like again." The crowd clapped. Olivia teared up. Afterward, as they cleaned up confetti and folded chairs, Claire turned to him. "Letter," she said. "I read it." Ethan looked at her quietly. "She didn't respond because I wasn't ready. But I kept it. She paused. That has to mean something. He nodded. It does. To me, it means everything. They didn't kiss. They didn't make any declarations. But when Claire brushed a piece of confetti from his shoulder and left her hand there a little too long, Ethan knew. The door wasn't closed. It was opening. Slowly, deliberately, beautifully. And this time, he wasn't walking through it alone. Claire hadn't visited Ethan's new home before. She'd imagined it might still echo the world he came from, all steel, glass, and expensive silence. But when she arrived, what she saw stopped her in her tracks. It was a modest two-story house tucked into a quiet neighborhood, framed by wild jasmine and ivy creeping along the fence. A swing set leaned slightly in the backyard. There were chalk drawings on the sidewalk, crooked hearts, stick figures labeled Mommy and Dad. The moment Ethan opened the door, he smiled, not with confidence, but with quiet hope. "You came," he said gently. "Said I would," Claire replied. He led her inside. The air smelled of cinnamon and roasted brewed coffee. Not grand, it felt like a place to live, comfortable, intentional. She noticed the little things first, the rain boots by the door in 4 different sizes, a shelf full of bedtime books, the kids' artwork posted with pride on the fridge. Then she saw the photos, dozens of them, scattered everywhere, dizzying. Emma sleeping with her hair tousled. Grace holding a muddy worm she'd just caught as a trophy. Noah reading to Liam on the quiet porch. And scattered among them were shots Ethan must have taken when he visited. Claire in the kitchen, Claire holding the kids, Claire smiling casually through the window. "You've made them your world," Claire said, her voice almost a whisper. "I'm trying," he replied. "You weren't there, you can't change that, but you can be here now." They sat in the warm living room, sipping delicious hot tea. Claire noticed the walls. They were painted in soft, warm colors. She saw a list on the wall titled, "House Rules," written by the children. Say sorry. Share cookies. No yelling. Love each other. She turned to Ethan. "You've changed." For them, and for me. They walked through the back garden, where the children had planted strawberries and tomatoes, all healthy and beautiful. Claire ran her fingers through the leaves. "You really gave up everything for this, didn't you?" Ethan nodded. "The penthouse, the company, the image, everything. I didn't lose anything, I just stopped pretending that my old life had ever made me happy." Claire looked at him, unsure whether to feel anger, admiration, or something in between. "You left me once," she said. "Do you understand what that means?" Ethan nodded again. "I think about it every day." They sat on a wooden bench near the garden shed. "I wasn't ready then," he said. "You loved me, without condition, and I didn't know what to do with that. I was scared. I was still trying to live by someone else's rules, my father's, society's, my own cowardice. It were cruel," Claire said plainly. "I know," he replied. "Time survived without you. Thrived." She hesitated. "So what now? You want to suddenly walk back into our lives and pick up where we left off?" Ethan shook his head. "No. I don't want to pick up where we left off. I want to start from here. I want to be more than a visitor in your world." Claire looked down at her hands. "Ethan, do you love me?" There was no humor in her voice, no hesitation. The question hung in the air, heavy with everything they'd endured. "I never stopped," he said, "but I didn't know how to love you then, not the way you deserved. I was too selfish, too afraid." She looked at him, her eyes steady. "So, why now?" "Because now I know what love looks like. I've seen it in how you raised our children, in how you fought every day without me, in how you built a life rooted in honesty, not pride. I want to be part of that life, not as a shadow, not as a mistake, but as your partner." He stood and took something from his back pocket, but it wasn't a ring. It was a folded note. He handed it to her. Claire unfolded it slowly. Inside was a letter, simple handwriting, raw, heartfelt. It read, "I will never be able to rewrite the day I walked away from you, but I can build 1,000 better ones moving forward. I've watched you carry the weight of love alone for far too long. Let me carry it with you now. Not because I'm the father of your children, but because I'm still in love with you. Entirely, completely, unshakably. Claire folded the letter back up, her hands trembling slightly. You're not proposing, she asked, half smiling, half weary. Boyfriendly. I am, he said, stepping closer, but no ring this time. No big gestures, no promises I can't keep. Just me, asking if you'll give us another shot. Claire stared at him. Then, at the garden, the house, the home he had tried to make from scratch. Finally, she said, this isn't about the kids. I know. It's about whether you and I can ever be us again. Ethan nodded. I'm going to ask you one more time, she said quietly. Do you love me? Not the idea of me, not the mother of your children. Me. Toward he exclaimed. Every flawed, fierce, brilliant part of you. She took a deep breath. And, finally, she smiled. It wasn't forced, it wasn't tentative. It was full. She said, if it's our way, again, but this time we do it our way. Ethan exhaled shakily and laughed, almost in disbelief. Claire added, and I want to choose my own ring this time. Absolutely. They sat back on the bench, hands intertwined. Later, back at her apartment, the children swarmed her with questions. Did you like Daddy's house? Emma asked. Claire hugged her. Very much. Are we moving in? Noah said, eyes hopeful. Yet, Claire replied, but maybe soon. Is Daddy staying? Liam asked, tugging her hand. Claire knelt down. Yes, sweetheart, he's staying. For good. That night, after the kids had gone to sleep, Claire sat on her bed, holding Ethan's letter again. She read it twice, then a third time, not because she doubted it, but because she could finally believe it. Her phone buzzed with a message. Ethan, thank you for saying yes. I won't let go of this, not again. Claire replied. Mia's, this time we build it brick by brick, together. And as she turned off the light, slipping under the covers, she whispered aloud to the dark. I choose you too. Claire didn't want a cathedral. She didn't want designer gowns or media headlines or a guest list curated by status. She wanted real. She wanted family. So they chose the backyard. It was the same backyard where the kids had played, fallen, learned to ride bikes, where Ethan first planted flowers with Grace and built rockets with Noah, where Claire had sat many nights wondering if healing like this was even possible. Now, that same space had been transformed. Twinkle lights stretched across trees, white folding chairs lined the grass, the old oak tree stood tall and proud, wrapped in gauzy fabric and blooming jasmine. Olivia had spent the morning arranging simple floral centerpieces, and Emma had hand-lettered signs that read, "This way to love." There were no reporters, no stylists, no spectacle. Just a soft summer breeze and the gentle hum of laughter. The children were buzzing with excitement. Noah took his ring-bearing duties seriously, polishing the tiny velvet box every 5 minutes. Emma, ever the theatrical one, insisted on making the announcement. Please rise for the most beautiful bride in the whole world, and my mommy. Grace scattered petals from her hand-woven basket, twirling in slow circles, whispering to herself like she was in a fairy tale. Liam, ever gentle, took Claire's hand and whispered, "You look like a princess, Mommy." Claire wore a simple white dress, nothing dramatic, just soft linen and a crown of jasmine in her hair. She walked barefoot on the grass, her hand steady in Liam's, her heart full of every ache and joy that brought her to this moment. Ethan waited beneath the oak. He didn't wear a tuxedo, just a white button-down and navy slacks, his sleeves rolled, his expression open and unwavering. When she reached him, he mouthed, "You take my breath away." Olivia stood between them, holding a small notebook. Her hands trembled slightly, but her smile was wide and warm. "I've known Claire as a warrior," she began, "and I've watched Ethan become the kind of man who earns his way back. What they share now is not a fairy tale. It's real." Claire took Ethan's hands. "I don't promise perfection," she said softly, "but I promise truth. I promise to fight for this love even when it's hard, especially then." Ethan's voice wavered, thick with emotion. "I promise to keep choosing you, not just when it's easy or when the kids are smiling, but when life gets messy, when you need silence, when we don't know the way forward, I will stay." Their vows weren't loud, but they were clear. And when they kissed, the children exploded into cheers. Olivia wiped away tears. Even the neighbors peeking over the fence clapped. In that moment, there were no ghosts of the past. Only love, layered with truth, anchored by choice. Marriage didn't magically erase what came before, but it created a new beginning. One stitched with laughter, commitment, and daily moments that slowly, beautifully rewrote the story. Claire, once hesitant to speak in public, became a fierce advocate for single mothers. She started by mentoring women at the shelter, then moved to hosting workshops. Word spread, and soon she launched the Hamilton Foundation for Families, helping women transition from hardship to independence. The foundation gained momentum quickly. Grants came in, volunteers signed up, stories poured out, stories that deserved dignity. Ethan supported her every step of the way. He returned to work, but part-time. His focus wasn't boardrooms anymore. It was bedtime stories, scraped knees, and soccer games. He partnered with nonprofits, funding small businesses started by single moms and offering scholarships to children who had been abandoned by the system. At home, he was all in. He braided Grace's hair every morning before school. He built Lego castles with Noah and let Liam win at memory games most of the time. He let Emma paint his nails every Sunday and wore the colors proudly. And when Claire had long nights at the shelter or speaking engagements, he made dinner, gave baths, and kept the house running with a rhythm born not of obligation. They weren't perfect. Sometimes they argued over the kids' screen time or who forgot to buy milk. But the difference now was simple. They argued from the same side, and they always came back to each other. One spring evening, they hosted a garden fundraiser for the foundation. The backyard glowed with string lights again. Guests from the shelter mingled with donors, families, and volunteers. The kids performed a little dance, choreographed by Emma, chaotic and horrific and beautiful. Claire stood beneath the oak tree, microphone in hand. She looked at the faces before her. So many she recognized, so many she didn't. But all of them connected now. "It was a time," she said, "when I thought being left behind defined me. But that was only one part of the story. I've learned that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about building something beautiful from the pieces." She glanced at Ethan, standing with the kids, all of them smiling up at her. "Love isn't always easy," she added, "but when it's chosen, truly chosen, it can change everything." After the fundraiser, they lingered on the porch swing. Claire rested her head on Ethan's shoulder as the kids dozed off on blankets in the yard, stars flickering overhead. "You remember the first time I brought you tea?" Ethan asked. Claire smiled. "I was pregnant and nauseous and mad at the world. I was clueless, too confident. On fast-forwarding," she laughed softly. "Even then, especially then." They sat in silence, fingers interlaced, watching their children dream beneath the stars. Claire whispered, "If someone had told me all those years ago that this would be our life." "You wouldn't have believed them," Ethan said. "More," she said, "but I'm glad I lived long enough to see it." He kissed the top of her head. The night wrapped around them gently, and as a breeze carried the sound of the children's breathing through the open windows, Claire closed her eyes and whispered the words that now lived in her heart. Her home, and every hard-earned joy they'd built together. And love doesn't always come easy, but sometimes the hardest road leads you home.